Welcome to the Georgia show. It's it's been quite a few days, Bill. We're going to try to dig down and make sense of everything that's going on in Georgia. There's a lot happening. It's almost by the hour, it seems. I get a call from Bill. Did you hear about this?
I remember the days when we talked about, we think it's going to get busier soon. We just didn't know what we were talking about until lately. Holy crap.
Yeah, well, and we've got this whole network now that we're just getting all kinds of information coming in, which is fantastic. Thank you very much for people that are sending that stuff and doing a lot of the work behind the scenes that we can produce and get out to the public. We're brought to you by the Georgia Record, georgiarecord.com. Please support us. Please support our no ad subscriptions. Please sign up for our social media. And this is our no ad. You can go there, get access to all of our content across CDM. I mean, we're breaking news literally from the Balkans, Eastern Europe, Ukraine, Middle East, Asia, Latin America, and down into the local jurisdictions like Georgia, which is highly important because this is a global war against freedom and we're at the tip of the spear. We need your support. It's $10 a month. You get access to all of our content with no ads. Please help us with that. It's really effective to give us revenue every month. And our social media is growing. We need you to help subscribe on X and on CDM1, which is our Rumble channel. And we're back on YouTube. So this show will be loaded up on YouTube today.
And don't forget Truth Social.
Yeah, and we're cranking on Truth. I think total we're well over 3 million followers on Truth if you combine all of our different accounts, which is fantastic. Thank you so much. And I know that certain people read us. So we had a Mark Mitchell at Rasmussen come out today and really spread around one of our articles on Ukraine on armedforces.press. We really appreciate the attention we're getting and the Georgia information. You know, it's kind of like we're like that dog that's howling in the corner, Bill, and everybody wants to ignore it, but it's getting so loud that nobody can ignore us anymore. It's really interesting to watch as this unfolds. Well, tell us what we got today, my friend.
So we're going to start with a very remarkable young gentleman who is running for a seat in the Georgia GOP in the upcoming state convention, Ja'Quon Stembridge, and we will hear about his background and what he's been doing, and I think it will be fascinating for the listeners. We'll also hear from Garland Favorito and Ricardo Davis, who are going to talk about the curling verdict and a reminder of some of the things that they went through and kind of an assessment of where we are, where we may be, both with this case and maybe broader. And then we'll have a couple last things to talk about. There's some very interesting things happening that folks are receiving just this morning, and we'll talk just a little bit about that. And then we're going to give people a quick peek at something that will be coming out through Georgia Record literally immediately following the show. So we'll get a chance to have them see that.
So stay tuned. I want to give a shout out to one of our new sponsors, which is Tucker Carlson's alppouch.com. You got yours in, Bill? Or you?
I do not. I don't have it in, but I have it with me, and I'm not stealing it. So, you know.
So this has been a real successful product for us. A lot of people out there use Zen, which is the woke company. Alppouch.com /CDM is where you can get the Tucker Carlson alternative. And we're going to run a quick ad from Tucker. That wasn't it. Sorry.
That was interesting.
Here we go.
So we are in the factory in Kentucky. This is Alp World HQ, and we are at the end of the packing line. So I'm going to show you how it works. We have the card, throw that in there. There's a packing slip, and then you have the Alp. And 4, but that seems honestly like a lot. 3 now, but it's good. You just pack a punch that, you know, for a normal nicotine brand, it'd be like 8. You know, we think 3 is fine. Next one. Again, 4. Let's throw 3 in just to keep it fair. Okay? There you go. So you can see you can get fast at this. And really, it's just a matter of repetition. This is kind of the assembly line that, you know, Henry Ford devised so long ago.
Tucker, stealing all the Alp again.
Once again, I know that's Bill's favorite, but it's alppouch.com /CDM. Okay, Bill, turning it over to you, my friend.
Okay, very good. I had the chance in the last couple of days to visit, as I said, with Ja'Quon Stembridge. So I would love to spend some time talking about him, but he does just fine on his own. So we're going to hear directly from him now. All right, we are delighted to be with Ja'Quon Stembridge. Ja'Quon has announced that he is running for Assistant Secretary for the Georgia GOP. So, Ja'Quon, thank you so much for making time for us.
Thank you for having me, Bill. It's truly an honor to be here with you today.
It's, a lot of people, I think, will find this a fascinating story. I know from talking to other folks that I've worked with now for several years, there's been this consciousness of, we would like more young adults to be cognizant of what's going on in the things that will govern their lives potentially in some ways going forward. And so it's I think many people will be very encouraged to hear about your decision to run. So I guess one of the first questions is, how did you come to the decision? What was it that motivated you?
Yeah, well, I was actually sitting back for a few months after the election of 2024 where President Trump won. Obviously, I was sitting back and I said, well, I'm getting older. I'm old enough to vote. I'm old enough to actually get involved in party politics now and actually be a delegate at the state convention, things of that nature. Well, what can I do to get more involved? And so I started thinking about it. I said, well, maybe I could run for a state committee position. And I thought about that for a little bit. I thought about running for district positions. And then I saw and I heard about the assistant secretary position. I said, well, I've done state stuff before. I've been involved in state politics a little bit before. I've done team Republicans for the state. I've been involved with different state politicians here and things of that nature. And I said, well, how about I give it a shot at running for assistant secretary? And so I prayed about it. I thought about it, thought long and hard about it. I spoke with some friends about it, and they said, I think you should go for it. I think you should do it. And so I prayed about it, and I really prayed hard about it. And I asked the Lord about it, and he gave me an answer, and he said, the Bible tells us not to live in fear. And so I decided I wasn't going to live in fear. I decided I was going to step out of my comfort zone. I decided I was going to take a walk out on faith. And so one day I said, you know what? I'm running. I'm going to run for assistant secretary. I went back and I started making me some graphics, and I posted on social media, and I told the world I'm running for assistant secretary because it's in my heart, and I believe that it is time for Gen Z to have a seat at the table. That's the main thing that drove me, was that Gen Z desperately needed a seat at the table in this party, and I realized that the party needed to be able to reach out to the next generation of voters.
I think that's a very astute way to put it. As I said, there's been concern that not enough young adults have been involved, and it kind of begs the question why. In some ways, folks have noted, and I've noted it too, that even my own children have had challenges being part of, if you will, the American dream. Things are not as easy, perhaps, or able to make the kind of progress that perhaps we were back in the 60s, 70s, even 80s in some cases. And so it would seem that they should be, as you say, have a seat at the table and be able to have their views heard and hopefully acted on. So great step. You mentioned you had been part of the Republican teens in the state. Can you tell us a little bit about that as well, please?
Yeah, so back in 2023 is when I first got involved with the Georgia Teen Republicans. I started the Georgia 10th Congressional District Teen Republicans chapter. It was a 10th Congressional District Teen Republicans, so it was over an entire congressional district. And so I started that because I wanted to empower more young people to take a stand, to get involved, to have a seat at the table. I wanted to empower more young conservatives to let them know that you're not alone. There are other young people out there who also kind of think like you. And there's also some young people who are just trying to find their way. But we want to be able to bring the conservative message to them so they have at least options other than just the Democrats' agenda. And so I started that in 2023. And I later became the first vice chair of the Georgia Teen Republicans, the state chapter. And then I became the chairman of the Georgia Teen Republicans of the state chapter. And so for the past few years, I've been going all across the state, crisscrossing all across the state at different speaking engagements, speaking to county parties, speaking even in South Carolina. Actually, I should do a speaking engagement in South Carolina, and I've been speaking to the grassroots and letting them know just how important it is that we do more outreach to Gen Z to let them know just how important it is for the Republican Party to bring our message to the next generation of voters. Because if we don't do that, we won't have a party left. Our party will die off, and we won't have a party left. And if we lose the Republican Party, we will lose America.
Yeah, it seems you would think that under the changes that are being made now through Doge and the work of Trump and Elon and others, people would be very hopeful, very excited about some of the changes being made. Yet there seems to be this dichotomy of opinion, people fighting back against it. But when they are faced with hearing, a lot of this waste, if you will, is in fact waste, fraud in some cases, millions of people collecting Social Security, and they're not people; they're probably just identities that have been taken from somebody. You would think they'd say, "Wow, this is great. We're saving money. This is my money too." And yet, some on the left fight back. They try to make it sound like these are not good things. But if you listen closely to what Trump has said, I think throughout most of his campaign, this is nothing different than he's said was going to be needed to restore America to where it was. I know that's a big question, kind of a big comment. What do you think? What is it going to take for people to understand just how good some of these changes possibly are as they get actualized?
Yeah. Are you asking about the tariffs?
Well, not just tariffs, but the whole notion of this magnitude of change in the government. Looking at the agencies and essentially closing some that aren't doing their job, and things like the tariffs and so forth.
I think that overall, like normal people, like normal Americans, I think they know that these changes are good. I think most Americans are very anti-government. They're very anti-bureaucracy, and they understand just how corrupt some of these systems are, and they understand the need for things such as Doge to go in and to actually investigate these organizations and these corrupt bureaucracies and to kind of get the corruption out of there. They understand that. It's the media and the Democrats who are having an issue with it. And you know why they have an issue with it, Bill? It's because they understand that if we have things like Doge that exposes their corruption, then some of our Democrat friends will be exposed in that as well, because they are one of the most corrupt, they are the most corrupt party in Washington, D.C., or in America, as I would say. They are anti-American. They are anti-grassroots. And so that's one of the reasons why they're so afraid of it. It has nothing to do with the regular Americans. You go around, you ask a regular Democrat, they'll probably tell you, like, if they're not brainwashed, obviously, they'll probably tell you, yeah, I support it. I think it's great what Elon Musk is doing. But it's the media and the Democrat elite who don't like these changes that are happening in our country.
And that's very astute. We've reported now for years how the media has consistently, mainstream media, of course, has consistently taken the side of the left, if you will, and tried to break down Trump's possibilities for the country and what would happen if he was able to achieve re-election. And they've consistently tried to portray it as something negative, and yet, hopefully, to your point, people understand these are good things. These are positive things. These are things that we could have hopefully have done in the past, but nobody was willing to stand up and get it done. Now we have somebody that will.
Yeah.
Speaking of Trump, I understand you had done some work during the campaign. Can you share a little bit of that with us?
So yes, President Trump, he helped get me involved in politics 2020. His message really helped bring me into the party in 2020. So in 2020, I started volunteering with the Trump campaign. I was only 12 years old, so he didn't want me out there knocking on doors by myself. So I made some phone calls in 2020. And then later, after 2020, I did some work to help try to save our 2 Senate seats at the time with our runoff. You may remember it was a hectic time in Georgia for the runoff system that we had here. And in 2022, as a field organizer for the Georgia Victory Team, we was out there helping knock doors, make phone calls to get some of Trump endorsed candidates over the finish line here in Georgia. And then in 2024, I wasn't as involved with the Trump teams as much. I did do a little bit of volunteering. I didn't do as much in 2024 because I was just so busy with going to college and doing my senior stuff in high school. It was a hectic year for me. So I did some things in politics. and I was considering joining the team, but with everything that was just going on in my life, I just couldn't. At the time, I had to start college and things of that nature, so I wasn't able to join the team full time, unfortunately. But I did everything I could. I did knock on some doors. I did make phone calls 2024, and I did write postcards for President Trump in 2024. And I did go around and I spoke about why we should elect President Trump in 2024. So I did do some things in 2024, but I wasn't as active with the Trump team in 2024 as I was in past years.
Okay, I understand. So you mentioned you're going to college. Tell us a little bit about that and what your aspirations are for your academic profile.
Yep. So I'm a double major. I am double majoring in finance and political science. I love politics. Obviously, I have a deep passion for it, is why I'm also doing it in college. But I'm doing some of that in college when I'm not at college. On my off days, I am a substitute teacher. I'm also part of the student government back at my college there. And so I do some of that. I do a lot of things within the community, just all about getting the young people involved in a lot of different things. I'm also the percussionist at my church. So I do that on Sundays. I am very deep in my faith. A lot of people don't know that I do that I'm a percussionist at my church. So that's something new. It's not new. I've been doing it since 2019, but I just don't talk about it a lot. But I am very deeply driven in my faith. I do talk about my faith a lot. But so I do a lot of things. I try to do a lot of things anyway to keep me busy outside of politics. Because, Bill, if you just make politics your whole life, you can start aging really quickly and you will start going bald before you're 21. I'm trying not to do that, Bill. So I try to keep myself busy outside of politics. I also love going to the Georgia football games on Saturdays when we do have that in town. So, and I'm ready for that to come back real quick.
Well, that's great. That's great. My daughter is a Georgia grad, and with kids now, it's a little more challenging to be able to make it to the games and such. But I'm lucky enough to call a number of folks, my friends, that almost don't miss a game. So very fun.
Yeah.
Let's see. You mentioned faith, and I want to explore that a little bit. I've been lucky enough to talk to a number of groups around Georgia, and one of the underlying themes that I think I've heard is that there's a feeling of this is a spiritual time. I mean, you could see it in some of the choices made by what we would think of as, well, it's just a bad administration. But it seemed to go in some ways deeper than that. More, choices that were made that actually were setting people up in many cases to get harmed. The number of illegal immigrants coming into the country and stuff, in many cases, resulted in people actually being harmed. And so there's this feeling of faith is a very important component of kind of what's going on now. And you heard it in, I believe, a number of different speeches by Trump. You heard it, I believe, on Inauguration Day. He said one of the things that the country needs is to come back to God as is just a part of who we are as a country. Tell us about how faith fits for you, and and when you're talking about politics and so forth, if you could.
Yeah, like I said, God is always first for me. I went to a conference a few years ago called Passion Conference. I've always been a Christian. I've always been involved in politics, but I've had some life experiences that kind of brought me closer to God. For example, in 2021, I was diagnosed with cancer in 2021. I'm actually a cancer survivor, so I'm happy to be able to speak to you about that. And so it kind of helped bring me closer to God, and it helped me get deeper in my faith and reading the Bible more and praying more and actually learning for myself about God and things like that, because I learned more about the power of prayer and what it means to actually pray. Mom always taught me about it, but it's kind of different when you're actually going through situations, and you can actually get closer with the Lord. And so that kind of helped bring me a lot closer to the Lord. And then back in 2023, 2022, maybe, I think 2022, you may know Tim Tebow, football player.
Mm-hmm.
He spoke at a conference I went to called Passion. And so he talked about how, you can have passions in life, which politics is my passion. But he said you can have passions in life, but never let those passions outweigh your passion for the love of Christ, or the passion for love of God. And so that also spoke very deep to me. And I made it clear ever since then that I would never, ever, even if I caught myself doing it, I would never put politics or anything else before God. But right now we are seeing like a spiritual revival, I would say, especially with my generation. It's great to see. I mean, you look at what happened in, I think it was Asbury College, I believe. They had a revival go on for like weeks there, and it was just beautiful. You have Passion. There's a Passion conference that comes to Atlanta every year, where it's like 40,000 people just coming together of students from this generation crying out, saying, you know, we need something more than myself. We need something that's bigger than all of us. And so we're seeing my generation cry out for that. And it's beautiful to see. And I had my own personal experience. And so I think this generation, what really kind of brought them closer to God was COVID, really. I think COVID kind of woke up my generation, letting them know that, okay, everything that you're taking for granted, it can be gone quick. I mean, we saw the government shut down the grocery stores, your church, and we saw them shut down the schools, all that kind of stuff. But we also, a lot of us lost family members from COVID. And so it really helped bring my generation back closer to the Lord.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Many folks that I've heard about you through have mentioned that their impression is you have perceptive abilities beyond your years, and I think what you just covered is part of that. So well done. As you go through the coming, I guess, weeks and couple of months toward the state convention and the election, I understand you're going to be appearing at a number of different things. One of which I think I was able to confirm is this event on the 17th of April. Now, this is a flyer that's a couple of weeks old, so I don't think your name is quite on here yet. But my understanding is it will be added, and they're going to have you at this event so that you can speak to the folks. And as you schedule other events, one of the questions people will have is, "Hey, wow, I'm really interested. Where can I go meet Ja'Quon? Where can I hear him speak?" And so, what will you be? Are you able yet to advise where you'll be posting these kinds of updates and so forth?
Yes, sir. So you can find me on social media. Find me on Instagram at J Stembridge, the letter J Stembridge official. There, you can find me there. You also can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter. There, at the real Ja'Quon there on Twitter. Or X, whatever you want to call it. And then on Facebook, you can just find me at Ja'Quon Stembridge. And I'll be posting a lot of different things there. On Tuesday will be one of my first campaign stops. And I can just tell you some of the things I'm going to for sure. I know on Tuesday, one of my first campaign stops will be in Walton County. We'll be speaking to the Walton County GOP there. On April 19th, I will be at the 8th District's convention. So if you're in the 8th District, you can find me at your convention. I will be there, ready to speak to the delegates there. And then on the 26th, April 26th, I will be in the 10th District at their convention. Speaking to the delegates there, which I'm from the 10th district, so it'd be like going home for me. And then I know for a fact that on May 10th, I will be at the GRA convention. So those are some of the things that I know for sure I will be at. Oh, then obviously April 17th, I'll be at that event that you just spoke about. So I already have some things scheduled. There's a few things that we're still trying to get scheduled. I am wanting to go out and speak to the county. So if you're a county chairman or a county chairwoman, I'll probably be reaching out because I really want to get out and speak to the delegates because, Bill, at the end of the day, I understand that I can get all the endorsements in the world. People can come on Facebook and say, I love what you're doing and we're supporting you. But at the end of the day, the only endorsement that will truly matter are from the delegates in the room on June 7th who actually choose who their assistant secretary is. And I want to work hard to earn the support of every single delegate who will be in that room on June 7th in Dalton, Georgia. And I really want to get to work. I really want to get to work and to earn those support. So I'm looking forward to speaking to the grassroots and going all across the state to speak to these different groups.
Well, that sounds remarkable, and it sounds like you were going to have quite the schedule over the coming weeks. So we'll be excited to hear more. as it gets going, and we'll enjoy having you back whenever we can welcome you back. So thank you again for being here. We will. I'm going to put up a screen with the contact points that you listed, so that people can easily see how to watch more and learn more about you, and then stay up with your coming appearances. So thanks again for being with us, Ja'Quon. It's a pleasure. You're a remarkable young man, and we can't wait to see how this plays out.
Thank you, Bill, for having me.
There we go. What a remarkable young man. Doesn't quite cover it here. I think
very impressive. I was very impressed. I hadn't seen that interview yet, so very impressive.
I think having spoken to him and learned more about him, he represents for me, very much the hope of the Republican Party as we go forward. I think he brings forward a lot of skills, a lot of who he is speaks to who many of us wish this party to be. So
yeah, definitely great job in getting that interview for sure, and we look forward to seeing more from him. Let's pay a few bills before we go to the next part of the show. David Cross is someone who we know well here. You should know him if you have a financial issue, as in you're managing your assets and your basically your financial life. He's the guy to call. You can trust him. We've known him for a long time. So let's run an ad from David, please.
This is a special report.
Knowing how to invest your money is harder than ever before. Dealing with stock market volatility, record debt, and terrorist attacks requires new thinking. At U.S. Asset Management, we can help you see the world more clearly so that you can move beyond the chaos and invest with confidence. Call us, visit us online, or drop by our office. U.S. Asset Management, helping you make better decisions with your money.
And one thing I should mention while we're paying some bills is Nucleo Boost. You can go to cdmnutrition.com. Let me pull that banner up so you can see where to go. For audio audience, it's cdmnutrition.com. And learn what we've developed with John B. Wells. We're going to play the Dr. Waterman interview again on CDM here probably this weekend or tomorrow. So look for that live streamed on all our networks. But Nucleo Boost is essentially what you need to fill the potholes in your road in your body with the basic nutrients to get into your cells. So back to you, Bill.
Okay. Following the Curling versus Raffensperger unbelievable dismissal based on standing, we thought it was wise to get the thoughts of both Garland Favorito and Ricardo Davis, who is Ricardo was actually one of the plaintiffs, and of course Garland Favorito through his organization has been supporting that case and others. And so we wanted to compare notes, see what their thinking was, how this relates to some of the other things going on in the country that are sort of unbelievable, and perhaps a hint at what may be coming next. So let's hear what they had to say.
Great.
All right. It has been a very interesting, quote unquote, week in Georgia. And we're very lucky to have Garland Favorito and Ricardo Davis with us today to talk about Curling and Raffensperger, the verdict there, and what it means as we look forward. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining.
You're very welcome.
So I'll go ahead, Garland.
No, go ahead, Bill.
Okay. I think almost the whole country is aware of the ruling that came out of Judge Amy Totenberg, finally, after, I guess, more than a year since the trial was held.
That is correct.
And she ruled that, unfortunately, she found the plaintiffs have lack of standing. This is after 8 years plus, I think, of the case being underway. And we even were asked about it the other evening by David Clements, who we were interviewing, and said, what is the feeling in Georgia? And I cited Liz Harrington that I felt was the best, which was a simple comment, LOL. How could you even explain this? Let me get your thoughts. What was your reaction when we saw this come out?
Well, since I got it late on the evening of March 31st, I actually thought it was an April Fool's joke. I thought somebody was playing us here. But then, as I realized this was an actual court document signed by the judge, it's like, oh boy, that's well, foolishness.
And this is a ruling that was made after time again. This judge has ruled in Ricardo's favor and the favor of the other plaintiffs for years, literally years. And suddenly, so I think Ricardo, David Coles, your attorney, summed it up best in 2 words, and he just simply said, intellectually dishonest.
Yep.
Well, that's very direct, and very well could be exactly the case.
But politically effective.
Well,
essentially, she gets a chance to wash her hands of the case.
Well, you mentioned something before airtime that I thought was very interesting, which is the timing of this. So, it could have come out theoretically before the election. Mm-hmm. It could have come out just after the election, but it came out within 4 days, 5 days, I guess, of the end of our legislative session here in Georgia. Mm-hmm. Now, do you see a parallel or a connection there?
Yes, I do. And Garland, I'll let you jump in as well. As the judge noted in her order, the state legislature had been taking actions to deal with some of the problems, in particular, the law now that mandates that we got to get rid of the QR code, which was one of the key issues that the plaintiffs were pushing on. How is it that, again, we have a system that doesn't comport with state law, that deals serious injury to our constitutional rights, and nobody's doing anything about it? So it looked as though now that, we're almost to the end of the session, so we're coming around the corner, it's late in March, we're making some very good progress on a number of bills, that in particular, one of them would have replaced the BMDs, which would have been a significant step toward what I was trying to get the court to do with regard to the system that we have. And I believe that the judge essentially said, well, it looks like that ship's about to sail, so you all don't need me anymore. Bye.
And the other significant thing about the timing of that bill, it was also 5 or 6 days after Donald Trump issued his executive order 14248, which also will eliminate QR codes from certification and basically rescind the certification of the existing machine. So I think either one of those two things could have played a factor in the timing of the decision.
Mm-hmm. Many people remember, too, that he spoke to a room full of governors, including our own Brian Kemp,
yes, he did.
and said openly, clearly, his wishes for our elections, and directly in line with what you both have been espousing now. Hand-marked paper ballots, hand counting, get rid of machines, single-day voting, and a number of people, me included, I think, sent notes to Kemp saying, "Are you paying attention? Because this is your commander-in-chief, this is your president, defining the way that we should run this. Is anything going to be done?" Silence, as usual. Silence.
Well, and I might add, the leader of the governor's party taking the lead with executive action and with the expectation that the governors in his party would follow his lead to actually bring integrity to at least the federal election. Mm-hmm. So I agree with Garland. all these things just kind of lead up to, it's like, well, you know what? This was a convenient time for Judge Totenberg to exit.
I remember earlier in the case, I think it was 17 or 18, before the 2020 elections, there was a finding or an initial ruling on the case, and she seemed to indicated a high degree of concern. So it seemed that it would move forward. Yet she didn't do anything just prior to the elections, and that to me seemed, I don't know, odd. If you can just elaborate a little bit on that. What was your impression back in those days? I know it predates some people's knowledge of even having the case out there.
Well, true there. The fact that we had our own little problems here in Georgia, everybody nationally was talking about, foreign interference in our elections back in the 2016 general election. So when, we have the finding that our current systems, in particular at the Center for Election Studies, the servers that were critical to the infrastructure of distributing essentially voting profiles all to every county in the state, that system was wide open to the internet. And after it was reported some months later, it was still open to the internet. It had not been remediated.
And not just voter profiles, Ricardo, in addition, to your point, it was the entire election preparation system.
Yes.
So to Ricardo's point, you could put something on there, a malware, and have it distributed to all the counties for all the elections and without detection, because the counties have no way to detect it. So I think that's a very significant point you're making, Ricardo.
So that was part of the pressure regarding us getting to the point where, for the same constitutional claims that we were asking the judge to deal with last year, in 2019, she gave us a ruling in our favor, which essentially ended up with Georgia being unable to continue with the old Debo DRE election system. So when we found out, we, the plaintiffs, found out what was going to replace those old Debo DREs, and we realized all the same constitutional questions were still in play, we went to the judge and said, Judge Totenberg, we still have issues. We still have constitutional claims here. Can we continue? And see, my point is that if we did not have standing, then she would not have allowed the case to continue.
Yeah. And that is why it is intellectually dishonest.
One more thing I want to remind people of, too, is the immense, I'll call it, amount of evidence that was presented through the course of this case, including Mr. Halderman taking one of the systems and basically hacking it with one of these, pen. And so, anybody can get a pen and with minimum knowledge, apparently, be able to, change something potentially in the system that could affect outcomes. Yeah.
Yeah. And he did it with the Secretary of State's attorney's pen.
Even better.
Which I thought was very appropriate. And that was the second time. Tamara reminded me, wait a minute.
Thank you. That's correct, Garland.
It was the second time he hacked the system in a completely different way in front of the district court, United States District Court.
I have to admit, though, the pen, which was the second time, was even more dramatic.
Yeah. I believe that Raffensperger himself avoided appearing in at least part of the case. Is that right?
Yes, he did. He was able to petition the court such that he would not have to be called to the witness stand. And Garland, I'm trying to think of the legal term.
Well, you know, while we're thinking about that, he appealed that. That actually went to the U.S. District Court of Appeals, because I think several of the parties appealed that to the court, and the appeals court ruled that he didn't have to testify.
Yeah.
Yes.
One of the things people note about many proceedings, not just this one, but that there seems to be a feeling of the folks that could answer questions have ways of getting out of doing that. The same thing happened in the True the Vote trial in federal court up in Gainesville. Raffensperger was called, but then was allowed to avoid testifying in that trial, and even down to the people reporting to him, Charlene McGowan refusing to turn over evidence that the state election board wanted to see, the ballot images and so forth, and saying, well, we have to see that this case is ruled done and over and resolved before we turn these over to you. It's kind of like, you know, I have the evidence, but I'm only going to get to you after the case is over. It's just bizarre. And it's what I hear is it's unbelievably frustrating to people that they can see this. They see this happening and they know it's wrong. And they wonder themselves, why is it that these people seem so empowered to make these kinds of decisions and avoid answering to the people?
Can I answer that question?
Please.
Because they know that there's a very high likelihood that the same people who are seeing all this go down are not going to do anything about it.
So I'm sorry, go ahead and complete.
And there it is. In other words, it took what happened in 2020 for, as it were, things to come to a head where people said, oh, no, you don't.
Mm-hmm.
And that really was what I would call the resurgence of the election integrity movement. Now, of course, you know, wave one was basically happened, you know, after the 2000 election between Bush and Gore. And that was primarily, again, folks on the left were crying foul. Some of us constitutionalists were involved. Garland and I, we were part of that. But most of the energy was on the Democrat side, because they felt they had been cheated, and that ended up creating a bunch of activity. And quite frankly, some things did get done. Now, it didn't move the needle here in Georgia, unfortunately, but in other states it did. Yeah. But now, 20 years later, I would say an even bigger steal, just in terms of its complexity, happened. And when I say steal, I'm just saying the accumulation of various issues in particular states indicated a pattern. Okay. Well, that energized here in Georgia a whole lot of people to get involved. And we can sit here 5 years later and say that there are people who have not just got in the fight in terms of, yes, I'll serve as a poll watcher, you know, so I can catch them in the act, as some people like to say, but they're actually, I call it, taking responsibility. Either they are serving as on their board of elections, you know, they're actually serving as poll workers or poll manager. You know, we see a lot of effort now, because it's not something we're not just angry at, because unfortunately on the right, that's the thing. It's been far too easy to see the nefarious deeds and complain about them. And quite frankly, listen to folks on talk radio complain about them, but not do anything. Right. I think the difference now is people And I have to admit, our friends at CDM have been very instrumental in helping move people to action.
Well,
not just complain about it, but to move people to action.
So in speaking to groups around Georgia in the last, probably in the last 6-7 months, just before the election, one of the topics that came up was, would we, and it kind of dovetails into your point, given the people that are involved now, would we, prior to 2020, have even suspected the depth of the problem that we now see, I would say in many ways, fairly plainly? I mean, given even this past week, the elections in Wisconsin, so many people were looking, and it took minutes for people to start spotting things that just didn't make sense.
Yep.
Would we have been prepared for that going back now 5 years ago or more? And if not, perhaps, maybe as Trump as himself has said many times now, perhaps it was good we had this pause. Does that make sense? That we now see things we would not have seen 5 years ago or more?
It's exactly what Mike Lindell said all along.
Yes.
Yeah. So painful as it's been, maybe there's I hesitate to call it a silver lining, but it's, there's a reason maybe that we are better positioned now to deal with this.
Well, we could have had a situation like what happened in Brazil with Bolsonaro. See, we didn't have what I call that complete collapse.
Yep, that's right.
But by God's kind providence, we had just enough to get people to understand, this stinks to high heaven. Yep. And it's not going to change until we do something about it.
Right. And do something other than what we've done in the past, whatever that may mean, run for office or whatever it takes. If you stand back from what happened here, not just with this case, but over the past 4 years, with all the cases that were, they failed to be taken up, failed to proceed, dismissed for every myriad reason. And then you stand back and you look at what's going on now with judges, federal judges in many cases across the country, standing in the way or actually turning around executive orders and other things that are helping protect Americans. So getting, I don't mean just, taking a whole bunch of illegal immigrants and deporting them. I'm talking about things to take MS-13 members, Trinidad members, and get them out of the country. They appear to be standing in the way of this, which means they're willing to do things that would contribute to potentially the harm of Americans. When you consider that and consider what happened here, one of the biggest questions I have is, do we have a working judiciary system in the United States?
No, it is totally corrupt, and this is a great example. What happened to Ricardo is a perfect example. And some of the judges lack courage. Some of them are just pure corrupt, like the judge down in Houston. I think it was Judge Hoyt that tried to put Catherine and Greg in jail. But but going back to this case, and let's just, we tell it like it is. Judge Thunberg made ruling after ruling, which were just some of the best rulings that we've ever seen out of a U.S. District Court. And they all just happened to benefit what she believed to be benefiting Democrats, because all the plaintiffs were Democrats. Suddenly in 2020,
that one.
And that's true, except Ricardo, he was our token conservative and the whole. But now, suddenly she changes because she's concerned that this might actually benefit Republicans, and oh my gosh, it might even benefit Donald Trump of all people. So suddenly, that's why she comes up with this corrupt ruling that is intellectually dishonest, and that's the polite way that David Oles put it. So you can see this is a double standard of justice. And the reason there's a double standard of justice in America is because we have corrupt judges who will sell their soul to their party. They have no integrity. They won't stand on principles. They won't judge based on facts and evidence of law. And that's where we are. So, my answer is, which I know you feel the same way, Bill, no, we have got, and I think you hit upon the most critical problem in America today, and that is the totally corrupt judicial system. It's basically become organized crime.
And it's ironic to me in a horrific way, because just think of the notion of a judge. A judge should be able to apply justice in every case and be things like impartial and everything. But at the end of the day, our expectation is that these people apply justice. And when they don't, gosh, it's just a feeling of more than sadness. It's hopelessness, perhaps, that begins to creep in, because people feel, how can we ever get back to truth, justice, and the American way, to coin a phrase. Very scary. I know you brought a graphic along with us. Did you want to share that?
We do.
And back to the case, as I noted earlier, Garland, in his case, he had been denied justice in the counterfeit ballot case there in Fulton County. And the state judge, basically had been agreeable, had been even-handed, to the point where, hey, Fulton County, no, you can't do anything with those ballots. You got to hold them. Had ruled that, yes, the plaintiffs would be able to get access to those ballots. And then at the last minute, you don't have standing. Yep. So I said, you know what? This seems like a frequent play when judges want to get out of denying justice. So when Janelle Clodfelter shared this little graphic here that you're about to share, it just reminded me that, yes, it appears to be something in what I call the black bag of tricks. When Judge Totenberg, it's like, hey, Judge Merrill, how do I get out of this? I mean, I got evidence right in my courtroom that something is not right here. And Judge Merrill says, well, Amy, just do what I did. Tell them they don't have standing. That got me out of the whole thing.
And it would seem that
until we got to the Georgia Supreme Court, it did.
Yes.
Yeah. It would seem that the standing issue might be chosen because it really doesn't have anything to do with the evidence that may or may not have yet been presented in the case. It appears to be one of those areas that is very subjective and open to interpretation. Thus, it can be used when, in this case, plenty of evidence is already in the record, but you can kind of get past all that. Does that make sense?
Well, so there's clear guidelines for standing, and we took those to the Georgia Supreme Court and won. So what's important here that we shouldn't lose? When Ricardo brought this case, he separated from the other plaintiffs because they were not willing to put the evidence of vote count failures and that kind of thing on the record, because that might show that the 2020 election wasn't the most safe and secure election in American history, as CISA tried to tell us. Mm-hmm. So if she had ruled based on the evidence and dismissed it, then Ricardo would have had incredible grounds to appeal, because he was denied the ability to call witnesses, even that were already on the witness schedule. He was denied the ability to ask full sets of questions to the witnesses from either side, defendants or opponents. And he was even denied the rebuttal witnesses. Mm-hmm. So this is almost unheard of in a federal court case. So he had a clear means to appeal and win. The only way that Judge Totenberg could have gotten around that is to declare that it had no standing, so that way she did not have to rule on the merits. Once she has to rule on the merits, then that opens the door for him to have a major appeal and have her overturned. So that is why she came up with this corrupt ruling that says that suddenly after 7 years, she decides that standing is somehow changed.
7 years, various orders, even at this phase of the trial, somehow we don't have standing.
Yeah. Intellectually dishonest.
I am adding that phrase into my vocabulary. You will hear me use it with abandon as we go forward. It seems to be very good.
Credited to your friend David Holmes.
I will. I would like to invite you gentlemen both back to discuss what was accomplished and what was missed during our legislative session as it relates to election processes and integrity and so forth. So we'll look forward to having you back on within the coming week. We'll work that out offline and figure out when we can have you back. Any last messages before we break?
Well, on today's election integrity update, I essentially shared with our supporters and folks who were just tuning in to find out why we got what we got this legislative session. And then we talked about what happened with curling. And just to encourage people that sometimes it takes a while for us to get our victory. Sometimes they're not immediate.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you talked about earlier about the situation with Donald Trump's first re-election bid. He had to lose that one, and it gave essentially the opportunity for us to essentially help fortify our elections processes and get more eyes on the situation, so that next time around we were a lot more prepared. Well, the only thing that will guarantee citizens who want to see integrity in their elections, the only thing that will guarantee they'll never get it is to walk off the field now.
Right. Well, it goes right back to one of Trump's famous statements, never give up, never back down, never, ever surrender.
Yep.
And so that appears to be the stage that we're at.
Yes.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us today. And thank you for the years of work put in just to this case, but also into all the other things that have been underway and are staying underway. So thank you for all of that.
Well, we are planning our appeal strategy, so I would just covet the prayers of your listeners as me and my attorney, David Oles and Garland, as we kind of strategize what our next steps are.
That's great. We will encourage that from everyone.
Thank you.
And Todd, for all you do.
Delighted to help. All right. In some ways, a little challenging. You don't want to hear these things. You don't want to hear that we're still struggling over this, but better to face the facts and understand where you are. So good.
Well,
guys.
Garland is right. We've been saying this literally for years, that it's highly organized crime, and that's what's going on here.
So we'll
I
hear
know we
from
don't have
them
a lot
again
of
this
time.
week.
Yeah, I know we don't have a lot of time, Bill. So back to you. What do you got left?
Two things. One, if you needed a little comedy today, I wanted to show this. Earlier today, many people got I saw this email arrive from WinRed, and at the top it has a quote from Brian Kemp, and it's talking about Georgia's record voter turnout and Election Integrity Act and all these wonderful election pieces of progress that we made. And of course, down at the bottom, it asked for money from WinRed. And we heard just the other night from David Clements that WinRed is perhaps not as bad as Act Blue, but they do seem to be doing things with regard to smurfing and processes like that need to be taken into account. And I thought it just the tip of irony to find a quote from Brian Kemp taking what appears to be a victory lap on election integrity in Georgia. This is the guy that, that says, hey, take that guy in the wheelchair, wheel him back out of here. I don't want anybody with a paper ballot please t-shirt on. So, you know, this is the kind of attitude that these folks have, but then they take the victory lap. Can't believe it.
Amazing.
And then one last thing, as we've been on air in just the last few minutes, we posted a new article, which will be available now to readers. And here is the title page of that: USAID connection to the Tea Party Patriots Foundation discovered. So go to GeorgiaRecord.com, the Georgia Record, and you will be able to read that. I think there'll be, as you can perceive and expect, there's going to be some fairly dramatic disclosures in here, and we recommend people take the time to read it.
And more to come.
And more to come as well.
All right, Bill. Great show. Thanks for all the hard work.
You bet. You bet. We'll see you guys next time.